The invitation had arrived on velvety quantum paper, the writing shifting between 17 different galactic scripts as Lucas Brennan held it to the light. Ambassador Lucas Brennan, it read, his title already rendered in the most formal honorific the Centurion Empire could devise. The paper felt expensive, the kind that cost more than a small spaceship. Lucas stuffed it into his back pocket, where it made a satisfying crunch against his worn leather wallet. "Another damned peace conference," he muttered, scraping the Martian dust off his boots onto the Proxima Embassy's doormat. He'd been summoned to Aurora's Prime, the neutral planet famous for its crystal hall of eternal harmony and its zero-tolerance policy for violence. The hall itself was a marvel of engineering, built by the first ones who had mysteriously vanished 3 million years ago, leaving behind only their architectural wonders and a series of increasingly confusing instructions on proper etiquette. By the time Lucas's shuttle touched down on Aurora's Prime, the other 16 delegations had already arrived. Their ships formed a semicircle around the Crystal Hall, each vessel a testament to its culture's aesthetic sensibilities. The Centurion Imperial flagship dominated the landscape, its obsidian hull absorbing light like a political black hole. The Rigelian vessel shimmered like an iridescent bubble, while the Andromedan craft resembled a floating cathedral of pure crystal. Lucas hopped off his shuttle, a modified cargo hauler called the Negotiator, and immediately broke protocol by walking directly across the sacred arrival grounds instead of following the designated pilgrim's path. His boots left muddy prints on the pristine white stones, each step a minor diplomatic incident waiting to happen. Inside the Crystal Hall, the 7-hour traditional greeting ceremony was already in progress. Lucas burst through the main doors just as the Rigelian ambassador was beginning his 3rd hour of acknowledging the architectural achievements of his ancestors. The sudden interruption caused a ripple of shock through the assembled dignitaries, their various sensory organs twitching with disapproval. "Hey, buddy," Lucas called out to the Centurion Emperor, waving with a chocolate bar still clutched in his hand. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder on the Gamma Quadrant bypass." The Emperor's exoskeleton shifted to a pale shade of blue, the color of barely contained diplomatic annoyance. Around him, his advisor's mandibles clicked in a rhythm suggesting professional mortification. The protocol AI, a floating sphere of sensors and moral judgments, immediately began broadcasting warnings in 17 languages. "Severe protocol violation detected. Please consult Chapter 347, Section 912, Subsection 4B of the Galactic Diplomatic Manual." Lucas grabbed a folding chair from the back of the room and scraped it across the priceless Eternal Harmony floor, the screech echoing off crystal walls that had witnessed countless solemn agreements. As he sat down, he propped his dusty boots on the empty chair next to him and began unwrapping his chocolate bar. "Anyone want some?" he offered, holding out the wrapper. "I've got about 50 more where this came from. Real Earth chocolate, not that synthetic stuff." The Proxima Centauri delegates' bioluminescent patches flared yellow with shock. The Andromedan representative's crystalline body emitted a high-pitched frequency, indicating severe cultural discomfort. Only the Rigelian ambassador showed any interest, his emotion-shifting robes cycling through a curious pattern of greens and purples. "The ceremonial opening has not concluded," intoned the protocol AI, its voice carrying the weight of traditions older than most civilizations. "We are currently on traditional greeting, stage 4, acknowledgement of ancestors 12 generations removed." Right, Lucas said, already bored. He pulled out his thermos and poured himself a cup of coffee, the aroma filling the great hall. "Look, I've read all the background materials. Y'all have been trying to hammer out this galactic accord for 3 years now." 3 years. And what have you achieved? A subcommittee to form a committee to establish guidelines for future subcommittees. The Emperor's color deepened to cobalt blue. "Your species' membership in the Galactic Council is recent and provisional. We do not expect immediate comprehension of procedures refined over millennia." "Millennia of getting nowhere," Lucas countered, offering coffee to those nearby. "Want some?" "No. More for me then." He took a loud slurp, the sound carrying through the hall's perfect acoustics. Here's what I think. We spend so much time following rules that we forget why we made them in the first place. The protocol AI's sensors rotated frantically. Alert! Philosophical deviation from established diplomatic framework detected. Recommend immediate adherence to dialogue structure. Gamma 7. Yeah, well, your dialogue structure Gamma 7 sounds about as exciting as watching paint dry in a vacuum, Lucas said, standing up and walking toward the sacred debate platform. How about this instead? He pulled out a bag of salt and vinegar chips and ripped it open, the aggressive crinkling sound causing several delegates to instinctively reach for their defensive postures. The next 3 hours devolved into what the protocol AI would later classify as unprecedented levels of informal interaction. Lucas had somehow managed to engage 17 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations in a debate about the merits of junk food. The Rigelian ambassador, to everyone's surprise, was particularly passionate about the crunch factor of potato chips, their emotional robes now cycling through enthusiastic yellows and excited purples. The structural integrity of the chip must withstand gentle handling, yet yield satisfyingly to mastication. The Rigelian explained, their translator struggling with the concept of satisfying crunch. The Andromedan representative, despite their crystalline biology making such consumption impossible, engaged in what appeared to be mathematical modeling of optimal chip architecture. Their body resonated at frequencies suggesting deep contemplation. Even the emperor had been drawn into the conversation, discussing the cultural significance of ceremonial foods in Centurion society. Though his exoskeleton remained a diplomatically neutral gray, occasional flashes of amber suggested grudging interest. In ancient times, the emperor explained, we consumed fermented glorum paste at treaty signings. The paste's bitterness reminded us of the cost of war. That's heavy, Lucas acknowledged, munching on another chip. We just eat wings and drink beer. Cheaper and less philosophically burdensome. The protocol AI attempted to restore order every 17 minutes, citing increasingly obscure sections of protocol that even the senior diplomats had forgotten existed. Its floating form began to wobble slightly, as if the very concept of informal snack-based diplomacy was causing catastrophic errors in its programming. As the break stretched into what should have been the formal position statement session, tensions began to resurface. The real issues, trade routes through Nebula K7, mining rights on the Outer Rim, and the contentious matter of shared technology patents, lurked beneath the surface of chip-based camaraderie. The Emperor finally called for order, his massive form rising from the throne that had been cut from a single quantum crystal. While this cultural exchange has been illuminating, we must progress to the actual negotiations. The fate of 17 civilizations depends upon our ability to forge a lasting agreement. Lucas hopped back to his seat, grabbing his thermos for a refill. The coffee sloshed precariously close to spilling as he gestured with the cup. Here's the thing about fate and all that serious stuff. Sometimes the heaviest decisions go down easier with a light heart. But sure, let's get to the nitty-gritty. The negotiations proper began, and the temperature in the room, both literally and figuratively, began to drop. Ancient grievances surfaced like swamp gas, each delegation quick to point out historical slights and treaty violations. The Rigelian ambassador's robes shifted to angry reds and defensive blacks as they accused the Andromedans of withholding promised technological exchanges. The Andromedans responded with harmonic frequencies that their translator interpreted as grave concerns over unauthorized mining operations. Through it all, Lucas continued to snack and sip, occasionally interjecting with observations that bordered on the absurd. Has anyone considered that maybe unlimited expansion isn't the solution? I mean, the universe is big, sure, but it ain't infinite. The human speaks of limitations, sneered the Proxima Centauri delegate, their bioluminescent patches now pulsing with condescension. Perhaps your kind's recent arrival explains such provincial thinking. Provincial? Lucas set down his coffee with deliberate care. Last I checked, your ancient wisdom has you all at each other's throats every few decades. We might be new, but at least we're trying something different. The Emperor raised one massive claw for silence. The human raises valid points about our cyclical nature, though his delivery leaves much to be desired. Perhaps we should adjourn for the traditional meditation period before continuing. But as the delegates began to rise, Lucas remained seated. He reached into his satchel and produced a datapad, its human technology looking primitive compared to the quantum devices used by other delegates. Yet as he activated it, holographic data streams filled the air above the sacred debate platform. Since we're taking a break anyway, Lucas said casually, I thought you all might like to see something interesting I put together during our snack time. The holograms showed complex trade routes, resource distribution patterns, and most alarming to the assembled leaders, detailed records of clandestine meetings and off-the-books deals that contradicted official positions. Each delegate found themselves looking at evidence of their own government's private machinations. See, funny thing about being the new guys, Lucas continued, his tone conversational but his eyes sharp. We don't have all these nice connections and established back channels yet, so we had to get creative. Turns out, when you pay attention to the little things, who orders what kind of cosmic fuel, which systems have their shipping routes scrambled, who's buying mining equipment but reporting no news strikes, you start to see patterns. The protocol AI began exhibiting signs that its programmers would later classify as existential crisis behavior. Its sensors spun wildly as it attempted to categorize and respond to the unprecedented breach of diplomatic secrecy. The Centurion Emperor's exoskeleton had turned a deep crimson, the color of barely contained rage or deep embarrassment. Around the room, similar reactions played out. The Rigelian robes cycling through dark purples of shame, the Andromedan's crystal body dimming with what their species equivalent to shock, and the Proxima delegates' patches flickering erratically. Lucas stood and walked to the center of the room, his boots clicking on the sacred floor. Without warning, he lifted his right foot and placed it squarely on the edge of the Emperor's negotiation table, the most sacred piece of furniture in the Centurion Empire, carved from the heartwood of their homeworld's first peace tree. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Security drones activated, representatives leaped to their feet or equivalent appendages, and the protocol AI began broadcasting warnings at such a high pitch that several silicon-based life forms winced. Violation level Omega, the AI screamed. Immediate intervention required. Initiate first contact genocide protocols. The Emperor's color had shifted beyond crimson to something the human spectrometers would later classify as ultraviolence. His guards moved to flank him, their ceremonial weapons now looking decidedly more practical. You dare, the Emperor began, his voice resonating with the power to crack mountains. Dare what? Lucas interrupted, digging his heel into the ancient wood. Point out that we're all sitting here following rules invented by people so long dead we've forgotten why they mattered. Rules that let us politely ignore each other's corruption as long as we say your magnificence often enough. The evidence hung in the air between them, each stolen secret and hidden agenda glowing accusingly. Lucas had somehow peeled back the civilized veneer to reveal the raw selfishness underneath. The Galactic Accord can't move forward because every single one of us is protecting some dirty little secret. The Centurions have been stockpiling rare minerals in violation of 17 treaties. The Andromedans have been reverse engineering captured ships despite sharing agreements. The Rigelians? They've been playing both sides of every trade dispute for the last century. He swung his foot down from the table, the mud from his boot leaving a perfect imprint on the Emperor's sacred wood. And you all know about each other, but you can't say anything because that would mean admitting you've been working around the same rules you demand everyone else follow. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the protocol AI had fallen quiet, its processors overwhelmed by the logical paradox of addressing such a massive systemic violation. Then, unexpectedly, the Emperor began to laugh. It started as a deep rumble that shook crystal structures throughout the hall, building to a sound that seemed to come from the beginning of time itself. The other delegates stared in disbelief as the most powerful leader in the galaxy laughed at what should have been the greatest insult to his dignity in living memory. "Guards, stand down," the Emperor commanded, still chuckling. His exoskeleton had shifted to a warm amber that none of his advisors had seen in decades. I believe I finally understand what my mate has been telling me about the importance of direct communication." He turned to face Lucas directly. "You are either the bravest fool in the galaxy or the wisest among us. Perhaps both." With a motion that shocked everyone present, the Emperor lifted his own massive leg and placed it on his table. "Ancient protocols and dignities be damned. If we are to have this conversation, let us have it without the comfort of our excuses," he declared. The room erupted in chaos, but this time it was different. The shock was mixed with something like relief, as if everyone had been holding their breath for centuries. The Rigelian ambassador, after a moment of their robes cycling through every color imaginable, suddenly burst into what sounded like laughter. Their translators struggled to interpret the mix of amusement and liberation in their response. "Huh, yes. Let us tear down these walls we have built with politeness." Even the Andromedan representative, typically the most reserved of the group, began vibrating at a frequency that suggested profound relief. "We have maintained these facades for so long, we forgot what lay beneath them." Within minutes, the formal debates transformed into something unprecedented in galactic diplomacy: the truth. Delegates crowded around Lucas's holograms, pointing at data streams and arguing not about propriety, but about actual problems and their solutions. "The Nebula K7 route issue," the Emperor said, gesturing with a massive claw, "could be resolved if we all admitted we're each running ships through the restricted zone. Pool our navigation data, create a unified system." "The technology patents," added the Andromedan, their crystalline form now bright with enthusiasm. "We've all been afraid to share advancements lest we lose competitive advantage. But if we created an open exchange system?" The protocol AI, in its first recorded act of adaptation, began rewriting its own behavioral parameters in real time. Alert: discovering productive potential in protocol violation. Updating diplomatic framework. Please stand by for new definitions of acceptable discourse. Ideas flowed freely now, lubricated by Lucas's seemingly endless supply of snacks and the complete abandonment of formal speech patterns. The Proxima delegates argued about fair mining rights while passing around chocolate. The Rigelians debated shipping routes through mouthfuls of chips. Even the Emperor found himself reaching for Lucas's coffee thermos, grimacing at the bitter earth beverage, but appreciating the clarity it brought to their discussions. By the time the third Aurora's sun began to set, they had hammered out the foundation of an actual agreement. Not the 3,000-page document full of legal jargon and carefully worded evasions they'd planned, but a living framework for cooperation. The Galactic Dietary Exchange Protocol, Lucas had jokingly called it, but the name stuck. It covered everything from technology sharing to resource management, but its core principle was radical honesty facilitated by communal eating. Every meeting would begin with shared food from each culture, and no topic would be off-limits during the meal. The Emperor raised the coffee thermos, which had somehow become the vessel of choice for impromptu toasts. "To Ambassador Brennan, whose boots on my table may have insulted honor but saved harmony." To Boot Prince came the chorus of replies in 17 different languages and communication methods. Lucas, true to form, couldn't let the moment be entirely serious. "Hey, while we're making radical suggestions, how about we scrap that 7-hour greeting ceremony? I'm thinking 15 minutes tops." The protocol AI made a sound like clearing its throat, if AI spheres had throats. After rapid recalculation, there's a 78.6% chance that significantly abbreviated greetings could increase negotiation efficiency by... "I'm going to stop you right there," Lucas interrupted. "Let's just try it and see what happens. Worst case, we spend 6 hours and 45 minutes actually talking instead of reciting our family trees." The final document signing took place at sunset, with all delegates, including the Emperor, signing barefoot to commemorate the day's monumental informality. The Emperor's ancient seal made its mark next to Lucas's scrawled signature, which he'd drawn with a permanent marker, because it's what I had on hand. As the various delegations prepared to depart, Lucas found himself surrounded by officials requesting his remaining snacks for their journeys home. Even the stoic Proxima delegate admitted that chocolate was surprisingly pleasant for organic matter. The Emperor approached last, his massive form casting a shadow across the signing platform. "I must give you something," he rumbled, drawing from beneath his ceremonial armor a small object. "This seal was given to my ancestor by the last of the first ones. It marks significant moments in galactic history." The seal, carved from some material that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states, felt warm in Lucas's hand. Its design showed what might have been boots or claws, or perhaps just abstract concepts of change. "I couldn't take," Lucas began. "A gift between friends," the Emperor interrupted. "Besides, I'm commissioning a memorial to this day. They're installing it right there." He gestured to the wall where Lucas had leaned while eating chips. A plaque had already been placed, written in all 17 galactic languages. "Here, through snacks and sass, Ambassador Lucas Brennan ended 3 years of diplomatic deadlock. Let all who negotiate hereafter remember, sometimes the best way forward is to put your feet up on tradition and your cards on the table." As Lucas's shuttle lifted off from Aurora's Prime, he could see workers already beginning construction on something in the plaza. The Emperor had commissioned a statue, 2 figures, one human, one centurion, seated at a table with their feet up, sharing what looked like a plate of snacks. Back aboard the Negotiator, Lucas kicked off his boots and wiggled his toes. He pulled out his datapad to begin his report for Earth Central Command, but paused at the opening line. "How did you explain that the biggest diplomatic breakthrough in centuries had started with a chocolate bar and ended with boot prints on sacred furniture?" In the end, he settled for simple truth. Mission accomplished. Used unconventional methods. Agreement reached. Will report in full upon arrival. P.S. Please send more chocolate. We're exchanging recipes with 17 civilizations now. The protocol AI, now installed in the permanent embassy on Aurora's Prime, found itself rewritten with new parameters. Its first act under the revised directives was to order a custom-made set of boots for display, replicas of Lucas's scuffed, red-dusted footwear. They were enshrined in a crystal case labeled, "The Boots That Changed the Galaxy." 3 months later, at the first follow-up conference, 17 civilizations gathered not in the Crystal Hall, but in the newly constructed informal negotiation center. The Emperor arrived carrying his own bag of chips and a thermos of human coffee. The Regelian ambassador wore a new robe that cycled through flavors rather than emotions, a technological innovation inspired by their culinary discussions. Even the protocol AI had adapted to the new era. "Welcome, esteemed delegates. Today's 7-hour greeting ceremony has been successfully reduced to 7 seconds. Please acknowledge your ancestors and proceed to the snack table." Lucas's boots, his actual boots, not replicas, remained on display in the original Crystal Hall, now renamed the Hall of First Truths. Children from all 17 species would visit on school trips, learning about the day when tradition bent to necessity and formality finally admitted defeat to honesty. The Galactic Accord, eventually expanded to include 47 civilizations, would always begin its preamble with a peculiar phrase that new members often questioned, recognizing that the first step toward galactic harmony is the willingness to put one's feet upon the table of tradition. And deep in Earth's archives, among official reports and diplomatic correspondence, lay a single chocolate wrapper, pressed between formal documents. A small note was attached in Lucas's hasty handwriting, physical proof that junk food really can change the galaxy. Do not dispose of. Historic artifact. Years later, diplomatic academies across the galaxy would teach the Brennan Protocol, the art of using disruptive informality to break through entrenched positions. Students learned to calculate the precise moment to violate protocol for maximum effect, though none would ever quite match the impact of that first boot on that sacred table. The Emperor, in his retirement years, often told the story of that day to young Centurion warriors. I learned that day, he would rumble, that true strength sometimes lies in knowing when to set aside your weapons and share a meal. And that humans, despite their primitive appearance, possess a wisdom that transcends their years. The statue in the plaza became one of the most visited monuments in the galaxy, with couples from dozens of species considering it good luck to touch the boots of the seated human figure. Tourist shops sold miniature versions, along with bags of diplomatic chips and bottles of treaty coffee. The Protocol AI, now running the most efficient diplomatic system in galactic history, occasionally experienced what its programmers called nostalgia errors, moments when it would suddenly start listing all the protocols broken on that fateful day, only to conclude each time with the same message: errors archived, new standard established, progress achieved through acceptable violation of unacceptable constraints. On quiet nights aboard his ship, Lucas would sometimes pull out the Centurion seal and run his fingers over its ever-shifting surface. He'd made history, but in typical human fashion, he'd done it with style and snacks. The galaxy was bigger now, or perhaps just smaller, drawn together by the simple understanding that sometimes the most cosmic of problems yield to the most earthly of solutions. And somewhere in the vast archives of galactic memory, the image of two leaders with their feet up on a sacred table stood as proof that peace, like the best friendships, often begins when someone is brave enough to be comfortable enough to be real. The final protocol of the era, written and signed by all 47 members of the expanded Galactic Accord, was simple enough to fit on the back of a snack wrapper. Henceforth, let it be known, diplomacy at its finest needs only honesty, a table, good companionship, and a willingness to put one's feet up, preferably upon tradition, whenever circumstances call for it. And so ended the age of pretense and began the era of practical peace, bootstrapped into existence by one human ambassador's dusty boots and the simple, revolutionary idea that maybe, just maybe, the universe could change if we talked to each other instead of at each other. The peace talks had ended when the human put his boots on the Emperor's table. But in truth, that was when the real negotiations finally began.